Welcome again. My name is Vittorio. We've been looking at a series of presentations about Intentism, the new international art movement, and we've been looking at the ideas of intentionality as well. We've recently been looking at where meaning can be found. We said it could be possibly found in three areas. We looked at the work, we said not entirely there. We looked at the audience, and we said that was no. And then we're looking at intention. Before we do that, there's something I'd like to have a look at for this particular session, and that's the complexities of the human mind and our experiences, because last session we concluded by saying that surely art is about looking at the intention of the human mind that produced it. That's one of the wonderful things about looking at artwork, is you can think of what was the human creator thinking of when they were looking at this particular work. So the question would be, is it easy to find the intention of a human mind? Because obviously minds are particularly complex. Well, let's have a look at this today. On the first slide we've got the artist's intention, the artist in perfect knowledge of his intentions. One of the greatest influences of both new criticism and postmodernism was psychology. One of the leading figures being Freud, and we've got the photograph of him there on the slide, and his seminal work, Dreams, which was published in 1900. The human mind was understood to be profoundly complex. The psychological baggage that we bring to everything was put at the forefront of analysis. The unconscious in particular was considered a powerful influence. It was only natural that questions would arise regarding intentionality. For example, is the creator ever fully aware of his motivations? Can he ever fully know the meaning of his work? Intentism agrees that a creator cannot fully be aware of every influence or motivation. However, this is the thing that's important. Intentism distinguished the difference between cause and intention. Every influence and motivation subject to the human mind, we would say those things are generally causes, not intentions. Let me give you some examples. First of all, I'd like to say that intention can include the unconscious. Three examples. First of all, intentions do often include unconscious performances. For example, in intending to read the sentence I'm reading at the moment, each letter is not consciously linked to the other to formulate the words. However, I'm intending to read the words, but not consciously linking the letters. Rarely, secondly, does the reader consciously turn a page of a book that he is intentionally reading. Thirdly, a footballer intending to strike a ball will not normally be conscious of the various movements of his limbs needed to perform his expectation. Clearly, then, the intentions can be unconscious. I'll give you another case study of this. The world-renowned hand surgeon, Dr. Brand, writes of a piano performance of a musical piece by Rubinstein. He begins by suggesting the pianist's intentionality by playing, by saying, a good pianist controls his or her fingers independently. The verb here to control obviously suggests an intentional agent in the pianist, and commending the agent as good. If these actions occur again, this suggests intentionality. Brand then questions whether this agent is fully conscious of his actions, and this is what he says. From my own careful calculations, I know that some of the movements required, such as the powerful arpeggios in Moonlight's third movement, are simply too fast for the body to accomplish consciously. Nerve impulses do not travel with enough speed for the brain to sort out that the third finger has just lifted in time to order the fourth finger to strike the next key. Months of practice must pattern the brain to treat the movements as subconscious reflex actions. Finger memory, musicians call it. Secondly, let's have a quick look at the difference here that intentists and people like Hirsch may have been speaking about between intention and cause. I'll give you an example. A man who falls in love with a girl says, I love you. He genuinely feels love towards her and expresses it. However, his lover exudes the same charisma as a previous girlfriend, and the smile is particularly similar to his mother. Both these subconscious influences affect the person says. These factors are possible causes of his expression, I love you. But the man intends to express his love for this girl, and this is the fixed meaning of these three words. However, the cause of his expression may not be known to him. In other words, meaning is the outworking of intention, even if other people understand the causes of the work, for example, I love you, or an artwork, or a piece of literature, more than the creator. Let's have a brief look at obstacles for interpretation. Again, it still relates to a lot of the baggage we've been talking about related to psychology. If psychology made us appreciate the mental baggage of the creator, it also helps us appreciate the reader's baggage. First, let's briefly look at the hermeneutic circle. Here we go. Obstacles for interpretation, the hermeneutic circle. One's understanding of the text as a whole is established by reference to the individual parts, and one's understanding of the individual part by reference to the whole. A very famous, complex problem, dilemma for people trying to interpret any text. Of course, there's a lot to be said for this, and yet, in the majority of instances, everyday communication is obviously successful. Why? Well, I like to simply make 4 comments. We could go on discussing this for a long time, but 4 basic comments for now. Firstly, I think there is an exaggeration on the degree of undecidables. Remember that Derrida phrase, undecidables, in any part of the text. In other words, there is a considerable number of interpretations that can be ruled out. For example, let's look at the sentence, I am an artist. And let's take each word at a time. I is a pronoun. It is the first person, and it must either be the subject or the object of the sentence. Therefore, it is not a verb, an adjective, or really anything else. Am is a stative verb in the present simple first person. This suggests that I is a sentence subject. And rather is an indefinite article for countable nouns. Therefore, the next word must be a noun or an adjective. That describes who I am. Finally, we're given the noun artist. We can rule things out. It isn't as complex as it might seem initially. I'll give you another example. The hermeneutic circle also fails to give credit for our ability to collect and assimilate information. A simple example was the game an even children play called 20 Questions, where the identity of a person or thing, i.e. the whole, is discovered by understanding and gathering answers to individual closed questions, which are the parts. It's not impossible to do. We can understand. We can get to a conclusion where we get the identity in the game 20 Questions. My third comment is this. There is no reason for a twist to work in a narrative if the author didn't assume that the audience were able to build up the individual parts of the plot and mutually expect a certain conclusion. Twists would not work. Well, if the hermeneutic circle perhaps isn't the best way of defining how things work with an audience and a work, let's have a look at the hermeneutic spiral. I think it's the best approach to looking at it. In other words, it's not that we go round and round, never reaching an objective understanding of the text of the work. It's not that we read a text and it affects us and changes a little, and then we return to the text, and text now, according to the birth of the viewer, says something different, and we are changed again, ad infinitum. The hermeneutic spiral should be understood as follows, and I think it's a better way of seeing things. We, as readers, have certain baggage. We have to accept that. That will mean we come to a work with certain prejudices. We interpret the work in the light of these, and we will have a great deal of personal significances and perhaps very little meaning. However, the intention of the meaning bridge in the centre is immutable. It doesn't change with every rereading. Through study, we can gradually reduce our significances and increase our understanding of the intention of the meaning bridge. We can learn about the intention of the writer, about his culture, about his time, etc. Although we'll never lose all our significances and know the meaning omnisciently, we can know it perfectly well, as in a spiral. We get closer and closer to the centre, and the centre being the intention to meaning bridge. Okay, lastly then, the view of the baggage, the fusion of horizons, which is Gadamer and Ricoeur. Gadamer and Ricoeur afterwards spoke of the fusion of horizons. In essence, this is what it says: all the cultural baggage of a text is likened to one horizon, and all the cultural baggage of a reader is likened to another horizon. Gadamer considered it possible for the reader to gradually distance himself from his own horizon and finally fuse his horizon with the text horizon, so some understanding of the text is possible. There again is some truth here, and yet I think it's overly pessimistic. Remember that much of these positions, or many of these positions, were taken up in the first or second generation after Freud and his psychology peers. It is the lot of man that historically, whenever a new insight is brought to light, its followers can react against previous convictions too wildly. Understanding that every reader brings baggage to a work is surely indisputable, but that doesn't make any understanding of the text futile. We are in the middle of a fusion of ideas and cultures that has no precedent in history. It is only natural for us to feel confused by all the alien worldviews that multiculturalism brings. However, this is the important part. As the dust settles, we can see how much similarity there actually is, and how many times we have had fusions of horizons with each other, and I think we'll be surprised. Of course, since words are arbitrary, there can be ideas lost in translation. We can't get away from that. However, the human minds behind the language have great commonality of experience, something that is fashionable to underestimate. In fact, I would say this: sometimes what is considered a fusion of horizons is no less than just empathy. We'll leave that there again for this session. Session number 8, next time we'll be looking at some difficulties in discovering intention. I hope to see you then. Thank you.